What's going on, my friends? It's Tuesday, but it feels like a Monday. We had a holiday yesterday. Thank you to our veterans, everyone who served this country, members of our family, members of our family, members of the client database. So many people who have helped serve this nation. Thank you to you. Today, we're going to talk a lot about BitCoin, what's going on there, what's going on in the crypto marketplace. We'll also discuss the real estate market, mortgage rates. Sort of won't stop going up. And some people have asked me very legitimate questions like, hey, I've noticed that crypto goes up as soon as Trump gets elected. And that seems to be the only thing. Stock market kind of just wobbling a little bit sideways. Although it has gone up, not a ton, not like crypto, and rates continuing to go up. And so are those going to be the two trends? Are we going to see a crypto market and we're going to see higher rates? What's the deal? Well, let's start with like the basis for why mortgage rates are going up. And then let's also talk very specifically about how they may go down. So what would cause mortgage rates to go down? Well, believe it or not, there is still a very, very, very large portion of the investing institutions who are not willing and or allowed to go too deep in the crypto side. Okay. However, MicroStrategy may be changing that because they can buy MicroStrategy stock. If you buy the S&P 500 now, you're buying Bitcoin, whether you like it or not. MicroStrategy is the #1 performing stock in the S&P 500, and MicroStrategy owns hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins. That's the reason why they're the #1 performing stock. It's not their little tech business, although that's nice. It's the Bitcoin. So my point is there's still a lot of institutions that need to park money. Now, mostly these bonds are owned by banks. We also know that banks are significantly underwater on their bond purchases and have been for many years, several years, let's say, at least 4 or 5 years. That's not a long time in a bond portfolio's lifespan. 4 or 5 years, not a huge amount of time. A lot of these are 20, 30-year notes. But it is a significant chunk. And a lot of these banks are upside down hundreds of billions of dollars in these bond portfolios. So when these bond prices keep going down, it puts stress on the banks. Okay, it puts them in a position where they are financially stressed on paper. And this is where I think the big opportunity is going to arise for rates to drop. It's not going to be because of a weakening dollar. No, Trump's policies are going to strengthen the dollar. Crypto is going to go higher because they're literally talking about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States of America, buying 1 million Bitcoins in the first 100 days. I mean, you want to know why the prices are going higher? This is the reason why. I mean, if the United States has to buy 1 million Bitcoins, and so does China, so does Russia, so it's a wild thing. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a second. But a lot of this money still has to go someplace safe. Why do banks buy bonds? Because they take your money into a savings account and then they need to do something with it. And there isn't always somebody who needs a loan on the other side, because you could walk in and deposit 100 grand in Bank of America today. That doesn't mean they have someone waiting to borrow 100 grand so that they have a margin, have a profit. They have to take that money, they have to park it somewhere. So they park it in the bond market. Right now, bond market, not super fresh, not like the best place to be with your money. It's just not. It's not the best place. There's other options that are better. There's other options that are much, much better. Let's get some sound effects going. So when we look at this, what we see on this chart right here is an asset that you can tell that a shock has taken place. And you can tell that the market is confused just based on the price action alone. This is mortgage bonds, right? So we want to see this going higher, right? When this is going higher, when it's ripping up like this, rates are dropping, that's great. When it's doing this like it has the last few weeks, last month, when did this start? When it topped out right around, mid-September. So it's a couple months. That's a couple months worth of rates going up. That's not fun. That's not fun. So what's going to stop this from happening? What could possibly stop this? Okay, 2 things. Number 1 would be you have some of the more older hedge fund managers, mutual fund managers who are kind of seeing, hey, the stock market looks like it might be topping out. And if I pull up the S&P 500 right here, you will see, okay, let's try to get a bigger gander of this guy, that this is also looks like it's at a top. Now, this is an all-time high right here. Why does this look like a top? I'll tell you a little secret. Boy, I'm going to give a nugget right here. So doing this type of analysis, you see we got this. We had the low right here. Then we got the higher low right here. And then look what happened, a lower low. So that typically means, okay, market structure shift. But when big money wants to really, really mess with you, what they do is they give these lower lows, right, to appear that, all right, the market's changed. It's going to come up here and then go lower. But what they do is then after they do that, they rip it up higher because they know so many people are going to see this lower low and expect prices to go down. They rip it up one more time. One more time. It's a very good chance. And although I hope I'm wrong about this, there's a very good chance that this right here is going to end up being our top or really close to it. Maybe it goes up and makes another little high or something. But somewhere around here is probably going to be the top in the stock market. And so we're likely to see some selling here. So if that happens, if that scenario plays out, as it appears that it may, then we have a situation where, I lose it all of a sudden. There it is. We have a situation where these bonds are going to become more favorable because a lot of those fund managers are going to have extra cash when they sell these stocks. They're going to have to place it somewhere. And so they're going to place it in the bond market, most likely. And so when they do that, that would cause these prices to go up. And that's what we want to see. Okay. Now, the other scenario where mortgage rates go lower is going to be where the Fed steps in. Because banks are stressed out so significantly by the amount of bonds that they hold and how underwater they are on them. And this has been for years now. This isn't a new problem. It's not a new problem, but it is a problem nonetheless. And it could give the Federal Reserve enough ammunition to make a decision to buy bonds. Now, mind you, they don't need to buy a lot. They don't actually even need to buy any bonds. If Jerome Powell came on the microphone and said after the next Fed meeting, we are considering buying bonds. If they did that, that'd be all that would need to be done. We're considering it. We're talking about it. All of a sudden, no one is a bond seller anymore. Everyone's a buyer, and the price would naturally go up. So if they institute even the smallest bond buying program, the smallest mortgage-backed securities bond buying program, then it would do a wonder for mortgage rates. And it wouldn't matter what they did with the federal funds rate. So the rate that they just dropped, as you can see, they dropped the rate, but then mortgage rates went up again. That's 2 times in a row. The Fed has dropped the rate and mortgage rates have gone up. Why? Because they're not a direct correlation. It's not a direct correlation. The direct correlation is right here in the bond market. So that's what we're focusing on. That's what I'm paying attention to, and that's what I'm looking at. Now, today, we got lucky. Today, got a few deals in escrow. Was able to lock early in the morning before we saw this big drop. Lost 59 basis points today. That is about 0.25% in rate. So pretty significant, ugly day today. Big gap down, just not pretty, not good, not what you want to see. But also keep in mind, we're still right at support. We got a lot of support right here. So let's not freak out, at least until that breaks significantly. If we wick through that, no big deal. If we close below that, then even I am concerned a little bit about what's going to happen in these coming days. Because if that happens, then this low is for sure getting taken out. And if this low gets taken out, we're talking about, back up into almost 8% for conventionals. So we do have some risk in that sense. And I think that is probably the biggest risk to the massive bull run in real estate that is right on the precipice, as demand is coming back into the marketplace significantly post-election as anticipated. Now the next excuse is going to be the holidays. And after that, it's game on. In 2025, demand is coming to the table. Right now for buyers, if you're a buyer who doesn't have a lot of the down payment, you're a VA buyer or an FHA buyer or something like that, these next couple months are probably your last chance to really have a negotiating power. And we're still up against multiples on almost everything. So best of luck to the buyers out there attacking the market. And that's just kind of those are the two scenarios in which rates could go lower and significantly in the relatively near future. There's also plenty of scenarios where we just see like a lot of sideways movement here. Like this just goes like sideways for a long time. And we just kind of stuck like this for a while. That also is possible until the Feds cut the rates so far down that eventually, the yields will be better on the bonds than they are in your savings account, which there isn't much of a delta now. And then you could see more money come in the bond market that way too. So those are just kind of like 3 different possibilities on how rates might go lower. Okay. Now, Tesla pulled back quite a bit today. Bitcoin. All right, what's going on here? Look at this chart. Look at that. I mean, this is crazy. So nuts. All right, well, let's look at a couple things. So here's a couple things. Bitcoin tops 89,000. Crypto euphoria over Trump win shows no sign of waning. It hasn't yet, mind you. And I want everyone to know this because there's a lot of people who are in crypto who are going to make this mistake. There's a lot of people who are going to start trying to get into crypto right now. You're watching Bitcoin go up $10,000 a day. Every bull market, almost every month during a bull market, there will be a significant pullback. It's a liquidity grab. They will try to take all of the money away from the weak hands, take all the Bitcoins away from the weak hands. That we talked about briefly earlier. Why is this happening? Let's discuss that. This is Cynthia Loomis. This is her page. She's a senator in Wyoming. Her, along with JD Vance, actually, who's the vice president-elect now, they have been very pro-Bitcoin, and they have introduced a strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation. This is the legislation I mentioned earlier that they are talking about getting done in the first 100 days of the Donald Trump second term. And so if that's the case, if they do this, because look what they're talking about here, implement a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program. There's only 21 million Bitcoin total. They're talking about buying 5%, and Satoshi has 1 million locked away, and there's like 1.2 million that are lost forever. So they're talking about buying over 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. That's significant. Now, this is where, game theory comes in. All of us Bitcoin maxis like me, we've been just fantasizing about this for years. And here it is. We're on the doorstep. Because if the United States buys 1 million Bitcoin, then Russia has to buy 1 million Bitcoin. China has to buy 1 million Bitcoin. And what's to stop them from saying one-upping us and buying 1.5 million? Because why wouldn't they? You have to understand these countries, and this is the ultimate game play for Bitcoin as an investment, is these countries can print money out of thin air. They can make money out of nothing. If the United States can spend money, they can. I mean, it's what we're doing. It's how we're surviving. You say, oh, we're 34 trillion in debt. We could just print to 34 trillion and just pay everybody off. There's a reason they don't, and I'm not going to get into that today. But they can essentially buy these Bitcoin for nothing. All they have to do is just issue additional currency and go buy it. Okay? Because it's not like they're spending the money on something. They're buying a reserve asset. It's an asset. So it's not a waste. MicroStrategy, if you want to see a beautiful stock chart, I mean, it's not even, I don't even know what to say about this stock chart. I feel like such a fool. I bought this thing down here at 120 and then sold it at 180. It's at 353. MicroStrategy, what they've done is implemented a Bitcoin reserve treasury. They are becoming a Bitcoin treasury company, and they use Bitcoin as their reserve currency. So they take all their cash and they put in Bitcoin. But not only that, they issue stock, again, free to them. Say, hey, we're issuing 1 million shares of stock. They sell them on the open market through the exchanges, just like they do every day. And they take that money, which they get for free, and they buy Bitcoin to it and add it to their treasury. So if you're a shareholder, you go, wait a minute, you're diluting the shares by 1 million shares. Yeah, but so what? You're getting 3,000 Bitcoin for it. So you're getting an asset. They're not wasting it, spending it on growth, spending it on expenses. They're putting it into an asset. So what MicroStrategy has done, and now, by the way, this is the #1 performing stock in the S&P 500. So you tell me other companies aren't going to do this? You tell me other companies aren't going to follow Michael Saylor to the end of the earth with this? They're absolutely already doing it. They're starting it. So you have that, plus you have the United States looking to add Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. Now you understand why we're at 89,000 and people are calling for crazy numbers. Can it get to the millions? It sure can. It sure can. And even the ratings agencies, the banks that have people that are covering crypto, their price targets are in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. The way it gets to millions is you have nation states fighting over it. You have companies fighting over it. Everyone trying to add as much of it to their balance sheet as possible. people would be saying, why would they want to do this? Why would these companies want Bitcoin? What is it? What is the benefit of it? How is it helpful possibly to them? I'll explain it as easily as I can. Bitcoin solves a massive, massive problem in the world that has existed forever. Every single currency that has ever existed, it channels and trends towards zero. It becomes worthless eventually because the people who can create it, print it, they always do too much of it. And it ends up being inflation to nothing. Now, we got a little experience with that these last few years, haven't we? We've seen inflation, which we haven't seen inflation this crazy for 40 something years in this country. And we were able to get it under control last time. But this time we saw it, we tasted it, and no one liked it. That was just a teeny tiny taste of inflation. You go to some of the places that really experienced a lot of inflation. There's countries around the world where there's money just in the streets, laying on the ground. People will use it to set a fire with because it's that useless. All fiat currency goes to zero long term. Now, this isn't a huge issue if you don't have a lot of money. So Bitcoin actually solves a problem for the richest of people first, because Bitcoin is programmed deflation. It deflates. There's only so much of it, and the new issuance of it decreases every 4 years by 1/2 until you get to it's no more issuing anymore. So there's a finite amount of it. There's a lot of other things about the Bitcoin network, the security features, the transparency. There's a lot of things that are really, really sexy. If you have a lot of money, we've all thought about, hey, what if I win the lottery? You know, I got $300 million. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to buy real estate. I'm going to do this and that. The wealthiest people and companies have been trying to figure out forever. I mean, look at Apple, for example. That's a company that's had a couple $100 billion in cash for a long time. What are they doing with it? Can you imagine how much money they would have made? Because they have way more than Saylor started with. They would be the bet. It'd be worth trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars if they had done what MicroStrategy did. If Apple had done it, just at any point in the last since Bitcoin was created, they would have it. So we're going to see it. So MicroStrategy was not a big company, and they were able to create this massive valuation by buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin solves a huge problem. It's inflation. Inflation does not exist with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is deflationary. So if you look at all the money in the world and everyone, all the currencies, all the countries, and all the fiat out there, all the currencies, they're all trending towards zero. And then you have this other thing that's trending toward infinity because it's literally finite. And the more adoption, the more people realize how it works, and the more time that goes by, no one can hack it. It's impenetrable. It's secure. It's transparent. It's an open ledger. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. There's no CEO. They can't change the rules. There's no politics. There's no favoritism. Everyone's treated the same, and everyone gets paid to save. The more you can save it, the better you will be. That's deflationary. Whereas right now, if you're someone who's been saving dollars in your savings account for your whole life, you've been working hard every year, really every day, but every year, that money buys you less than it did the year before. So it's going down in value. This is what Bitcoin solves and why we could see in the next 4 years. Okay. There's a lot of sort of, I don't want to say radical, but there's significant changes coming to policy with Trump coming in. And most of these changes are, positive for the economy, positive for jobs, positive for wage growth, positive for bringing companies back from overseas to America to create and make stuff here and have jobs here. And all that stuff is great. It's going to cause the economy to boom. It's going to cause companies to do really well. It's going to cause people to do really well, make more money. Talking about getting rid of the income tax and replacing it with tariffs, that also would be humongous. But at the end of the day, all that stuff is inflationary because growth is inflationary. It is. And it's okay to have inflation that's controlled and natural. That the type of inflation would be acceptable, right? Hey, prices are going up because people are making a lot more money. Not what we've had the last few years of, hey, prices are going up and I'm not making more money. And prices are going way up. That is what people don't want. Natural inflation is okay, but it's still inflationary. It's still inflationary. So depending upon all the things that are done to shore up the US dollar, it may be the case that we see something really wild happen with Bitcoin where price could go into a discovery phase where we're going into hundreds of thousands and could get to millions very quickly, especially if we do have nations buying it, because again, they're printing the money. They don't care what the price is. It's just game theory. We don't want that nation to have an advantage over us. We don't want them to be rich. When the currency markets topple, at some point they have to. They all do eventually. I mean, if you look at the currency markets closely, you'll see there's currencies just sort of dying all the time. And it's a real sad thing. It's a real sad thing. And Bitcoin solves that. So it solves a lot of significant money problems. And that's why we're seeing it go so high. Oh, I'm so sick of CNBC doing this. So sick of it. The articles just disappear. Unbelievable. So anyway, so that is why when we look at this, let's go back to the Bitcoin chart. Okay, I'm going to give you my targets. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing here because I'm already very long Bitcoin and have been for a number of years, but I want to add to it. I do. I want more. I don't think I have enough. Oh my gosh. The struggle is real. One-man production here. And so I am looking for pullbacks. Remember what I said earlier? 20 to 30% pullbacks in Bitcoin during a bull market are completely normal. And once enough people get trapped, it looks like it wants to go higher still here. This is a pretty big resistance area that we touched right here. It's a Fibonacci level, 89,000. It's rejecting off of that pretty good. We could see continuation to the downside. These yellow areas here are where I want to buy. So I'm looking at sort of like 82,000 to dip back in on some of the cash that I raised, and then 79, and then down here 76. And that seems to be a pretty clean place. Now, right here where we had this old high, 73.5 or so, that's a really nice spot. We get that back down here because ultimately, what is that level right there? It's this old high level right here, right? And so that's very normal when you break out of a range to come back and revisit that range just quickly. But it's also possible this thing goes up another 20,000 before it comes back. So expect volatility. Don't buy on a day where it's up like 10,000. Wait for a day that it's down a lot, and start your process of entering that. If you want to get into something like this, it is risky. You can lose your money. Talk to your financial advisor. It's not financial advice, but a lot of people are asking me this question. That's why I want to make this video. If you want to get into it, you still can. It's not too late, but I just be careful about buying on days where it's up and there's lots of euphoria. Wait for it to come down. Wait for it to look scary a bit. And that's probably your best entry. And it's going to be quick. Okay. These can happen very, very fast. It can flash down really quick and then come back up. So the best way to make these kinds of bids, in my opinion, is to put limit orders in at the areas that you would like to buy. That way, even if it visits that area just for a split second, you're in. That would be the way to play it, in my opinion. Same thing with Tesla. Here, I'm wanting to increase exposure on this one as well. You know how much I believe in this company long term. And now Elon Musk seems to be playing a pretty big role in the White House. Unfortunately, as a shareholder, he doesn't seem to be wanting to take advantage of that role, which is very Elon Musk. But he told President Trump apparently that there shouldn't be any EV credits. I'm like, what? Elon, what do you say? And he also said, but there shouldn't be any oil subsidies either. He said, make it a level playing field and let the market decide who wins. Stop subsidizing stuff. And so that's fair. That's fair. That's like game recognized game. Let's get after it. You know, he's not afraid of the competition. But I am looking for a pullback here. Something similar, you know, somewhere into this range here where we have these old tops. Okay. A revisit to the -1 also makes sense. So somewhere around here, just under 300. If I see it sub 300, I'm going to start adding to my position. My cost basis is like 126. I'm going to add because I sold pre-election a bunch of shares and, you know, was just starting to reaccumulate and then popped. So now I'm in a situation where I don't have everything I want. I want to wait for a pullback. I think there's going to be opportunities. This is also another one of those companies should do extremely well in the coming years, regardless of who's president, but just the next few years look very, very bright for Tesla. So Tesla also owns a decent amount of Bitcoin. I think $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. I'm telling you, that most people don't understand who all owns it and what's going on with it and how we got to this point. And that's okay. And it's very difficult to understand what it is. And I get that. It took me many years to really understand it. But with this legislation that's being proposed, and Cynthia Loomis is saying on Twitter, they're going to get this done in the first 100 days. I mean, that's first quarter next year. If the United States is pushing the buy button on Bitcoin, they're going to buy 1 million coins. Just to give you an example, only 450 coins are mined per day. 450. So if the US is going to buy 1 million, that means they're going to buy 2,222 days worth of all the Bitcoin. That is 6 years worth. And that's just one country. So you can see how the supply shock starts to cause issues there. Now, with regard to the real estate market and what I'm seeing right now, we talked about mortgage rates earlier. Let's see if I can pull that back up. Mortgage rates being a big factor. Here's what's happening. Demand is going to start coming back to the market. Post-election already has. I was the busiest this weekend. It's been a long time. Very busy today as well. We also are going to see, first of the year, past holidays, you're going to see, a lot of people getting involved in the market. I actually think we're going to have a pretty busy holiday season in the market as demand re-enters. Something we could say it out loud, whatever. I don't care. The reality is a lot of the people who were waiting on the results of the election were waiting or were hoping to see Donald Trump win in order to make big purchases. As you can see, markets flew high. Confidence is back in the economy and so forth. Didn't have that confidence with the current administration or the potential other candidate. This just wasn't there. And so there is now this confidence that America is going to be going in the right direction, that things are going to get better, that people are going to make more money, that, inflation is going to get checked. A lot of the things that people were worried about are solved essentially with the idea that Trump's going to follow through with what he's said he's going to do, just like he did last time. So that is also very helpful for additional demand coming back to the marketplace. Now, as that happens, there's also this fringe group that are waiting for rates to get to a certain point. Some of them are sellers, and that's part of the reason. Others are just rate shoppers, and they're just rate sensitive, and that's the way it is. Those people will come to the marketplace as rates go down. There will be a steady flow of them. The people who've been waiting to buy, who are just sick of renting, sick of throwing money away, sick of going, the market wasn't that great, but it still went up 6% this year. What are we doing? Renting. There's plenty of people just having logical conversations, pillow talk, the dinner table. What are we doing? Let's get a place that's ours. There's so many reasons to buy real estate besides just price going up. And so those people who have been sidelined have confidence now. We're past the election. They're making decisions. They're starting to re-enter the market. So you have the demand is going to start funneling back in. The highest inventory, though, isn't going to happen until rates are much lower. And that's where there's going to be a lot of transactions take place near the new cycle highs, which I imagine will be probably somewhere between 20 and 40% higher from where we are today. That's where we're going to see the most inventory exchange hands, because that's when rates will be at the lowest point. People who've been stuck in their home because they had a great rate and didn't want to sell it, they'll be willing to exchange at that time. And even though prices will be much higher, they'll be okay with it because they're going to make that money on their sale too. So they'll have the extra money to put down. The rates will be low. It'll be what they waited for. And so that is going to come later on in the market cycle. The next phase is allowing this demand to come back to the market and seeing what type of absorption takes place. So I'll do more of a real estate update probably on Thursday, maybe next week. We'll see. But for everyone who's been asking me about Bitcoin and what's going on with mortgage rates, two biggest questions so far, there's your answer. So we are live in a number of different places. If you want to say what's up, feel free to give me a shout. If you would like to ask a question, you can always ask your questions here, and I'll do my best to get to everybody directly at a later time. And of course, if you want to get a loan quote, it's free, it's quick, it's easy. Give me a call, shoot me an email, a text, whatever works, and I'm on it. We'll take care of you. Hope you guys had an incredible Veterans Day, a day off to just soak in hard work of many, many others. Have a great night, and I'll be here if you need me.